Today, we welcome gardener, forager, and community builder Jada Bee. She's the co-founder of the People's Co-op in Bloomington, Indiana, and she is the author of the book Gardening and Farming Journal, Our Liberation Fruits. And she makes the best wild apple applesauce around. So please welcome Jada Bee.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for being here. I am overwhelmed by how many of you there are and how exciting it is to be with Green America again. Again, my name is Jada Bee, and I am a farmer, a gardener, a wild forager, and a maker. And I make lots of different products for sale in our local farmers market, the People's Market. Today we're going to be talking about foraging, and while Emma gave me great praise for my wild applesauce, I'm not going to be talking about apples today, surprisingly, um, but rather many other types of entry-level foraging items, and then we're going to get into some more like higher end stuff. But this is meant to be an intro to foraging and some easy ways to find foraging in your community, in your backyard, as well as going out into the forests and seeking food for yourselves. So, with that in mind, I'm going to start sharing and get into the presentation, and then we'll do a Q&A at the end. And just give me 1 minute to get into the presentation itself. Okay, again, my name is Jada Bee, and here we go. We're going to talk about some foraging today. So let's start with some definitions. Wild edibles, also known as foraged foods, are collected from from the wild for human consumption. They include a wide variety of fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, fungi, and even some insects. They are also included in medical ingredients for natural herbal remedies, Ayurvedic medicine, and apothecary supplies. To really get into all that wild edibles are, we would need probably several webinars to sort of parcel out things between uh, a whole nut category, a whole fruit category. Mushrooms could be their own thing, as well as medicinals. So today I'm going to skip medicinals because there's such a wide variety to talk about, and they're really, really in depth. That conversation is really in depth because we have to talk about um, the quantities to use and things like that. And we're just going to kind of put that on the shelf for today. Instead, we're going to talk about things that are edible for snacking. Um, okay, so a definition of foraging in its simple form is the act of gathering wild edibles directly from the environment. Its practice has been a part of human life for thousands of years and is experiencing this resurge in popularity today, due in part by a wonderful TikToker named the Black Forager, Alexa Nicole. She is amazing. And if you see that she is coming to your town to speak, please do whatever you can to go see the Black Forager in person and listen to her talk about how foraging in an urban setting can be really easy, in a wild setting can be really easy as well for you, and that food is all around us. The indigenous communities of our world have stewarded wild edibles for a long time, hybridizing, cultivating edibles found naturally in the wild. In North America, we have remnants of plum tree trails. So plums were actually in North America were actually hybridized and cultivated by our indigenous families and siblings, I should say, and they really put thought into the different types of plums that they were creating and spaced them out so that as they traveled along hunting grounds, they would find fresh fruit throughout the year. Other indigenous cultures cultivated things like oranges in South America and so many more wild foods around the world. So we have a lot to thank our indigenous communities around the world for their protecting of wild food, for their cultivating of wild food, and for their developing of it. We would not have things like lettuce today without them cultivating and hybridizing lettuce to the point where it's tasty now. Wild lettuce is very, very bitter. You can live and eat it. But it's fairly bitter and not very tasty. And so, thanking our Indigenous brothers and sisters and siblings for their work in stewarding the world that we live in. So, I want to talk about some safety warnings when it comes to foraging. It is really, really important to know proper identification. I'm going to talk to you about some things that I like to forage for. But the best way to learn about foraging is through books, through videos online, and through doing your research, basically. And you need to learn how to identify any plant or fungi before you forage and eat it. There are many poisonous plants that resemble edible ones, so accuracy is crucial. Bring a field guide with you, and consult with experienced foragers. So there are many, many websites where people are doing different kind of foraging forums, and especially for mushrooms, and we'll talk about that later. But also on social media like Facebook and Instagram and TikTok, there are people who are specifically talking about foraging that you can message and say, hey, I found this, and show them a picture, and make sure you get all sides of whatever you're talking about, and say, I think it's this, but I'm not very experienced. Can you help me? And they will help you and double check that. So again, always double check and consult before you consume any wild edibles. Start with a small amount of new foods. Don't, when you're going out and you're foraging, number one, we don't want to over harvest, but two, you want to start with a little bit to see if maybe your body has a reaction to it. Because these may be new foods for you, that's something that you've never tasted before, you may or may not have a reaction to them. I know that there are some mushrooms that are perfectly safe to eat, but your body chemistry may not work well with them. So you may have more indigestion than a normal person would with it, or maybe just you think it isn't a nut, but actually it is in the nut family. So, and you have a nut allergies, things like that that may happen, that you need to kind of observe your body's reaction while you're eating. Never, ever, ever harvest endangered or threatened species. Now, there are some exceptions to that, in that some are endangered in one state or threatened species in one state that are not in another. And so you just need to be up on what state you're in and whether or not the food you are finding wild is endangered or threatened. The best rule of thumb for that is, if you're not sure, leave it be and just be happy that you found something beautiful out in the wild. Um, the rule of thirds is very good. Harvest no more than 1/3 of any plant you find to ensure the long-term health of the plant. And when in doubt, if it is something that grows above the ground and has a bulb, just use the top, cut the greens off of it, and leave the bulb so that it replants itself. Sustainability, harvest responsibly, and take only what you need. If your stomach is bigger than your eyes are bigger than your stomach, or whatever it is, be sure that you, again, going back to the just taking a small amount of something new, harvest what you think you can reasonably use in a short time period. And if you think you want more, then mark that spot in your mental map or on an actual map and go, I know I'm going to go back to that spot again later, or next year when the season comes back again. Beware of potentially hazardous environments, such as the poisonous plants, ticks, poison ivy. Also, that includes where you're harvesting. And so the next one is clean harvesting. Avoid harvesting near roadsides, other people's farms, especially if they use pesticides, or public areas where they're using pesticides to control pests and bugs and things like that. And be aware of the fact that there may be contamination from pollution. So those are things that you can find out through the USDA, through local government, um, and through some national government organizations, as well as private organizations that are concerned about conservation in your local area. Always respect nature as you're walking through it. Leave areas as you found them. Leave no trace. And that includes the stacking of rocks that people like to do to mark their territory. Sometimes people find that that's a fun thing to do, but really what you're doing is you're changing the environment for crucial bugs and maybe even beneficial plants that need the rocks to stay where they are and where you found them in order to flourish in those areas. And while I do say stay on the nature trails, when it comes to foraging, you may need to go off those trails, but be very conscious of where you're stepping and where you're putting your body while you are out in nature so that you do not harm the environment that you find yourself in. Some good foraging tips. Pack a foraging bag, okay? It can be, please make sure it's a reusable bag. Bring something like kitchen scissors or snips or shears. Bring a trowel if you need to dig things up. And a field guide is very important to help you continue to identify things. If you're harvesting things that are like, especially like mushrooms, you may want to grab a mesh bag with you or a trug or something that is open so that the spores and the bugs and potential seeds, even for other plants, can spread and help spread that particular wild edible. In particular, with mushrooms, spreading those spores is how you ensure that those mushrooms will come back again. You want to dress appropriately while you're out in the wild. Wearing gloves, long sleeves, and pants to protect you from bugs and other plants that can dig into you. Cleavers in particular, certain kinds of sticky plants that attach to your body can be no fun to pull off your bare skin. And because it's a pain in the butt to tear off your regular pants, imagine how hard it is to pull out of your skin. I once was foraging in an area that had a lot of cactuses and was not watching where I was going, and I was wearing shorts because it was warm where I was at. And yeah, I got a whole bunch of cactus needles all in my leg, and it was not fun to pull those things out. So please think about that kind of stuff, especially during tick season, which I feel like is becoming all season long, as soon as it gets warm. Ticks are on the rise, especially in the Midwest, and can cause a lot of problems. Lyme disease is not a fun disease, that's for sure. Bring bug spray with you, but try to use some natural bug spray so you're not killing off any pollinators and crucial insects. And ticks are the only exception. If you need to bring the really heavy stuff to put, especially around your ankles, I would not begrudge you that. So that may be a conflicting message, but I trust that you can figure out what is best for your environment and spray it before, like if you're getting out of the car, right? Or before you leave the house, as opposed to while you're in the wild. And I know we all want to keep our foraging spots secret, but you should tell people where you are going for safety reasons. Um, Not only could you get lost, but there could be other people out there. There could be animals out there that you are not aware of. And so also for legal reasons. And so there are a lot of foraging laws that are on the books. And I will say just one thing about foraging laws. Um, they were created and invented to prevent, sorry, I went back, prevent African Americans from foraging on private land. They were a part and parcel of um, regulating the movement and travel of African Americans in this country, as well as Indigenous people in this country. So I'm going to click on this little link here. And so this is a from the Fordham Urban Law Journal, and it is a comprehensive understanding of the law of foraging. And so I hope that I'm going to capture that right now and see if we can put it into our chat. And okay, back to our regular thing here. Um, we were talking about location, so you need to think about lead in your soil. And so I've created another link for you here. That is a news source about the lead in soil. And I live in an area where they did, in fact, dump lead at one point in time. And so I need to be very conscious of where lead is in the soil that I am harvesting from. And then the last thing that I'm going to talk about is that it's technically illegal to forage in national parks, and you should be aware of that. But there are people talking about the case for legalization of it. And there are indigenous people in particular talking about needing to have access to those national parks for their foraging to sustain themselves. The last foraging tip I'm going to give you is, of course, hydration. So bring some water. Maybe bring a little snacks with you as well, depending on how long you're going to be out. Again, you never know if you get lost. So you never know what you're going to need. But I also recommend bringing a little trash bag with you, or maybe even a big trash bag, and to help clean up the environment as you go. So while you're looking for wild edibles, you're also helping to clean up the trash that happens to persist in our wild environments, especially plastic. So it's a good thing to do. You're not only are you taking from nature, you're also giving back to it. All right, let's jump into it. I'm going to get into the things that I like to forage for and talk to you about. Service berries. Service berries are generally planted as decorative trees but they're also highly nutritious. They're also called shadbush, shadwood, shadblow, sarvis berries, or just sarvis. June berries may be the other more popular term you've heard of. Saskatoon is another fun word for them. Sugar plum or wild plum or chuckly pear. They are in fact safe to eat raw, but they're fairly tart, so they're better cooked as jam, with some sort of sweetener. Our indigenous siblings used to use them to make pemmican, which is a mixture of tallow, dried beef, and service berries and or other berries. They're really high in vitamin C, fiber, iron, and protein. They are rich in antioxidants and provide much needed fall and winter fruit. I think we get a lot of fruit in early spring and into the summer, but some fruit sort of peters out as we get into the late fall and into the winter. Service berries are an amazing thing to pick. They're abundant. They're literally like go to your doctor's office and they're probably growing a service berry tree in their yard. And again, you want to check to make sure that they are not being sprayed with anything. But they're an amazing wild edible that for some reason we've decided are just purely decorative. And this speaks to the fact that we plant wild edibles all the time, but people have forgotten that you can eat them. And so a service berry is a great entry level way to forage because you're going to find them literally everywhere. My neighbor has one in his very front yard and he never picks any of the berries. So I end up picking the berries for him. Another one is spruce tips. Spruce tips are planted again commonly and found in lawns and public parks and hiking trails, and again at your doctor's office maybe. And in the early spring and early part of the summer, the spruce tree produces new tips, and these new tips are tender and full of nutrition, high in vitamin C and beta carotene. These tips can be plucked or twist or pulled off the tree, and you want to also make sure you're leaving enough on the tree to make sure that the tree is growing new, has new growth. but they can be used raw, chopped up and put in salads to add this interesting uh like piney kind of flavor. Some people are really into that. I love a pine flavor. I don't know why. They can be used for garnish for fish or poultry, and cooked in soups and stews. They can be made into a jelly or a jam, and they call that a spruce jam. And spruce jam is amazing. It's like eating a tree, really, and like it's kind of fun. My favorite way, as you can see in the picture there, is to turn it into a syrup. You put brown sugar in with your spruce tips, and it must be brown sugar. And over a good 48 hours, maybe another day or so, the sugar will start eating the spruce, and you'll basically get like a syrup. And then you could put that into cocktails over ice cream and soda water and have like a spruce soda. Um, because these two wild edibles are so common, they make this really great easy foraging. Many people can just walk out into their front yard and use them all over the country. Um, yeah. Oh, yes. So that's a link to the spruce tip syrup. I'm going to grab it and put it in the link, the chat for you all. Boop, 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 real quick. How to make it. Boom. And next slide. Oh my gosh, I keep clicking on the wrong thing. Here we go. The next slide here is lamb's quarters. I don't know how many of you recognize this. You may recognize it as a weed that's growing in your yard and garden right now. Um, it is a nutrient-dense powerhouse wild edible and can be found pretty much anywhere. Yeah, the side of the road in ditches, which, again, we should figure out what is happening in those ditches before we harvest from them. But a lot of times they're going to be growing wildly just in your backyard or in the beginning areas of forested areas. Lamb's quarters are also known as meld, goosefoot, wild spinach, fat hen, and white goosefoot. They are delicious replacement for spinach. When cooked, it mimics spinach in all ways, including taste and smell and usage. Some grow in large thickets and some in isolated areas, but once they show up, they will come again and again and again, due to the powerful seeds that they possess. The seeds get carried on the wind and kind of spring up everywhere. Many gardeners fight their lamb's quarters and pull them out of beds maybe that they don't want them to be in, but I say leave them and let them grow because they produce so many leaves and so many offshoots that you get tons and tons of free greens. And that's amazing. We even have fossil records of lamb's quarters. That's how hardy they are. And they're found all over the world, but in Mexico, they have like some of the best recipes for them. They can be eaten raw or cooked. They're great for salads. And again, in place of any greens. I make a delicious basil and lamb's quarter pesto, and it's so delicious and full of nutrition. I just basically make a pesto, but I replace half of the basil. Sometimes if my basil does not cooperate with me and I don't get enough of it, with lamb's quarters, and I'm getting a more nutritious pesto. Lamb's quarter is a good source of vitamin A and C, as well as calcium. They have magnesium, iron, and potassium in it. And even the seeds are edible. The seeds can be dried and ground into a flour. They can be similar to quinoa, or they can be eaten whole like a grain. Lamb's quarters grow in sunny or partially sunny areas, including gardens, roadsides, and trailsides, like we said, fields and vacant lots. They're often found in places where with disturbed soil and tends not to invade healthy native ecosystems. Um, yeah, I really love this. Right now in the People's Market greenhouse, we have just sort of a bunch that came in on some uh, compost that we got. And so it's like springing out of our compost, and we're like, great, free food. It's really one of those wonderful things. Oops, went too far. The next is wild onion, ramps, and fiddleheads. The fiddleheads are here, curled up with the lemon slice here, also here next to the ramps. Fiddleheads are or fiddlehead greens or fern greens or full fronds or fledgling ferns are harvested to use as vegetables. They're eaten cooked as a leafy vegetable. The one in the US are what's called lady fern and ostrich fern. They're found in damp, shady woodland environments and sometimes grown for decoration in our own lawns. They are delicious as a sautéed green and stir fry or as a standalone dish and taste like broccoli, spinach, asparagus kind of all rolled into one. Um, the fiddleheads are can be found fairly easily in the spring, and a little bit into the summer as well. If you're out on a hike, you may spot fiddleheads. Do yourself a favor and bring a guide that can help you identify which fiddlehead is which, because there's a lot of ferns out there, and some fiddlehead ferns taste better than others. Then we'll go back to our raw onions here on the far side over here. Boop, 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 boop. Those are our wild onions, sometimes called Canadian onion, garlic, Canadian garlic, wild garlic, meadow garlic. They are onion grass or crow garlic or stag garlic. They are first appearing in the spring in usually lawns and gardens and meadows and forest trails. They have an edible bulb that has a strong onion odor and taste and or garlic. Sometimes the wild onion and wild garlic is not the same, but sometimes people will call the wild onion a wild garlic because it maybe smells a little more garlicky than oniony. Um, it is considered an invasive species in North America. So unlike many other wilds, you can go hog wild on them, harvest them, dig them up, dig up the bulbs, pull them out of your neighbor's yard and garden, and get rid of them if you want to. Or you can just cut the green stuff off of them and use it as like green onions. Um, they are okay to be dried. Right now, I have some drying, and I should probably have brought them over. I dry them and I cut them up into little pieces and sprinkle them into dishes or use them like in ramen. Um, so that's great. And then the next one that we're going to talk about are the ramps here. This again. And these ramps here, you get a better idea of what the bulbs, what they look like all together. Ramps, also known as ramson, wild leek, wood leek, or wild garlic. It is a bulbous perennial flowering plant in the amaryllis family. They are an amazing delicacy found mostly in eastern and western, midwestern parts of the U.S., though they are prone to over harvesting by amateurs. It is best to harvest just the leaves of this plant. So unlike the wild onions that we were talking about, where you can dig those up, ramps harvest the leaves of the plant so that the bulbs can grow new shoots so you could go back and harvest them again, or that they can spread for the next year. The French rendering of Chicago is what they call them. And it's our Native American name for this plant. Uh, and it's the namesake of Chicago. So the French call it Chicago, and so they got it from the Native American word for ramps. Um, Ramp butter is one of the best things I have ever had. I recently went to a really high-end restaurant in my town, and they served these little bits of bread with ramp butter. And so it was just a combination butter with cut up ramp pieces inside of it, and it was absolutely stunning. I've had it before, I've made it myself. Ramps are something that in Midwesterns go crazy for sure. I'm not sure how East Coasters or Southerners, if you've ever had ramps before, but I highly recommend if you're traveling here in the springtime to go to a farmer's market or even a farm to table restaurant to try some ramps. Next, I want to move on to my favorite of all of the American fruits. So I'm going to talk about some fruits now. Um, the pawpaw. The pawpaw and persimmons are amazing next level foraging because they require some processing. The other stuff that I was talking about before, many of it you can just eat or quickly cook down and eat. Now we're getting into stuff that you need to process a little bit. Okay. Um, the service berries need a little bit of processing, but not much. They're mostly like you can cook them like you would any other kind of fruit. Um, but when we get into fruits like pawpaws and persimmons, they take a little bit more knowledge, but also a little bit more foraging. There are plenty of other fruits like wild blackberries and blueberries and salmon berries, but these two fruits are very unique to and important to this country, especially as winter and fall eating fruits. The pawpaw, I'm not sure people outside of the Midwest or like sort of this one area really even know about pawpaw that much. But they're the only tropical fruit native to uh, North America. So other tropical fruits that we have were brought in. This is an actual native or actual tropical fruit that is native to America. They are related to the custard apple, the chamoya, the soursop, and the sweet sop. And they have tons of regional names, including wild banana, prairie banana, Indiana banana, Hoosier banana. Then you can throw in West Virginia, Kansas, Kentucky, Michigan, Missouri, Appalachian, Ozark, and Indian banana. It's also called the Banango and the poor man's banana, as well as Quaker's Delight and Hillbilly Mango, which I think is very funny. Because one of the ways that people describe the taste of a pawpaw is that yes, it tastes like a banana, which is why we, have that, but it sort of tastes like a banana mixed with an apple or a mango or a pineapple. Um, and then other people say it tastes like eating a banana apple flavored custard, but in fruit form. And then it's really truthfully one of the most amazing and unique fruits in the world. It's has many, many seeds, as you can tell. And so when you're eating it, you kind of suck on the outside of the seeds and spit them out or like save them and try to plant them. And there's a whole thing about planting them. There's some really great books about pawpaws, but that custardy inside is very delicious. Um, when hunting for pawpaws, you will also find them in tree groupings called the pawpaw patch, and they are typically only ripe in late August to September, and occasionally early October. This fruit is eaten when it is soft flesh and then completely soft to make pawpaw, and you can make pawpaw bread from it, which is one of our favorites here in Indiana. It has a short production season, requiring quickly ripening, and it has made it hard to cultivate for commercial consumption because when it's ripe and you want to transport it, it doesn't have a very good shelf life from like ripe enough to eat to spoiled. And so there are many people also that claim that it uses weird pollinators so that it needs to have dead or rotting meat at the base to propagate. But really, it's spread through fly pollination through the beautiful flowers, and they look like little brown flowers. They're gorgeous. And I should have put a picture up. I'm sorry. Moving on to the American persimmon, because I know we don't have that much more time. The persimmon is, or common persimmon, Eastern persimmon, simon, possumwood or possum apples or sugar plum. These fruits amaze me every year for the abundance that one tree can produce. Um, It is thought that many of the persimmons in Indiana were planted and cultivated by the Miami and Potawatomi indigenous tribes here, because we have so many in the Midwest, but specifically here in Indiana. In fact, one of our great singers here would like to create a Indiana have a national like a state song, and he wants to call it Persimmons. So. Persimmons can yield gallons and gallons of fruit in the fall, and the fruit, after processing the seeds and the skins um, off of them, you can freeze that to be used later. The best recipe that Indianas and Hoosiers have is a persimmon pudding. And I think I have a link to that. I'll get to that in a second. Um, it's a firm pudding, like a bread pudding, with a delicious persimmon flavor, extremely high in vitamin C, which is why it makes a good winter fruit. The important difference between the American persimmon and its Asian cousin is that the Asian persimmon can be eaten fresh, and are picked from the trees right before ripening because they continue to ripen. But American persimmons, it is said that they should only be picked after the first frost and once they have fallen from the tree. Now, I have found that you can, in fact, pick them shortly before the first frost, as long as it has been really cold. And you can pick them from the tree if they're soft and sort of squishy. Um, that's just my experience with papa hunting. Processing is the key to this fruit, though. You have to have a sieve to get the seeds and the skins off, and it takes a lot of doing. And it's because the skin, as you can tell there in this picture, have this alum-like substance on the outside, which makes the fruit sort of taste, it's stringent when you're biting it fresh, but when you, and sort of makes you pucker, but when you process the and cook them, it removes all of that, and you're just getting like a nice sweet fruit. Now, a true Hoosier, though, a true Indiana person, will eat them right off the tree and not make a face whatsoever. And another fun fact about the persimmon is that if you split the persimmon seed in half, you can tell the weather. If the inner sprout resembles a fork, it indicates a mild winter. If it has a knife shape, it predicts a harsh winter, and cold winter. And if it has a spoon-like shape, it foretells a snowy winter. Because of time, I'm going to skip ahead. I was going to talk about acorns. Acorns are amazing. Um, there's another little nice look at the persimmons and pawpaws. That's my wife there. And so I'm gonna go ahead and just kind of, acorns and black walnuts are plentiful. So this is another level of foraging. I'll just kind of talk really shortly about this, but they require a lot of processing. They're abundant. You can get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them, gallons, buckets full of them, but each of them require a lot of processing to make them edible and usable as a foraging food. In particular, acorns have to have a leaching process where you boil them over and over and over again to remove the tannins from the acorns. And they're useful in, you can pound them and then use them as flour, basically. You can also get an acorn starch, which is useful in many Asian dishes, in particular Korean dishes. There's a lovely edible jelly that they use from it. So yeah, and black walnuts can be made into a no chino, which is a black walnut liqueur. You can eat them just like walnuts, but the processing time of getting that outer hull off means it stains your hands quite a bit, and it's very time consuming, and you need a nut press in order to crack them open correctly. If you use a hand press to try to crack open gallons and gallons of nuts, you're going to be there forever. All right. Last slide here is mushrooms and fungi. Now, again, fungi, medicinal herbs that are wild edibles, these could be a whole other webinar, and I hope Green America invites me back maybe next season to talk about these things, and go in depth with you. But my favorite ones are morels because I'm from the Midwest. Morels are just delicious and versatile. The best way to eat them, I think, as a Hoosier, is to batter and fry them. Um, Morels have a look-alike called a false morel, and it's easy to tell the difference between the two of them because the false morels are solid all the way through, and this is the morel right here for those who don't know. The morels are solid all the way through, and the true morel has a hollow cap, or is hollow all the way through. And the caps have this like honeycomb-like look, while the false morel is like ridged and shrinked and kind of like looks kind of wrinkly and withered kind of. And their caps are usually misshapen, whereas the true morel usually has this very distinctive cap to it. Morels come in white, black, and gray, and some with a white tan color. and they are found near hardwoods like ash, elm, and apple trees. They mostly appear around the spring, often in March to May, depending on the region, and they can be found in many regions all over the United States. Unfortunately, not in the southern regions too much. Um, yeah, uh, wild forage morels can sometimes be bought online from local organic grocery stores or co-ops, anywhere between 20 to 40 pounds. So you can imagine how much Midwesterners love the morels if they're willing to pay $40 a pound for some morels. Another favorite is the chicken of the woods, here sometimes referred to as cow or just simply chicken. It's a favorite among mushroom hunters and enthusiasts. They are bright yellow and orange and have a shelf-like shape and the presence of pores, not gills, on the underside. They are typically grown on hardwood trees, especially oaks, and can be found in clusters or individual brackets. You want them when they're young and tender. When they get older, they get woody, taste bad, and are hard to chew. Some forages say that there's a look-alike, the toxic jack-o'-lantern mushroom. But for me, if you've seen chicken of the woods and you've seen any other kind of similarly colored um, mushroom, you know chicken of the woods. Now, there is one that gets confused for chicken of woods. There's another mushroom called hen of the woods, but that's called maitake. That's also called maitake, but they don't look anything alike. So you wouldn't confuse them. You just might mix up their names. Um, yeah. So again, so much more to tell you about mushrooms, but um, you really need to be able to identify mushrooms because all mushrooms are edible exactly once. And that means there are quite a few poisonous mushrooms out there, and some that will kill you instantly. So please, please, please do your research on your mushrooms before you go out hunting them. There are many more mushrooms that are actually just what we call inedible, and that's because it'd be like eating bark. And so they're not necessarily poisonous, but they're definitely not something you want to chew on. Um, so the best thing to do is again go online and find other mushroom hunters and they can help you identify things. There's so many groups and chat rooms dedicated to mushroom hunting. Um, and find other mushroom hunters in your community. It is a super fun way to meet people as well as joining in the fun of mushroom hunting. My wife has a special grunt that she gets when she finds a mushroom and she goes, "Ooh." And it feels very primal. There's something very primal about mushroom hunting. So I love foraging, and I've talked to you so much about foraging today. I encourage you to look at these books, in particular, Sam Thayer's books, The Field Guide Edible Wild Plant. This man has many, many videos online and is an amazing source of information about wild edibles and foraging and things that are just growing literally in your backyard that you didn't know were edible but are edible. And he can help tell you what to do with them too. Especially this guide right here, identifying, harvesting, and preparing. I would also recommend these two mushroom guides for those who are interested in mushrooms. And this pawpaw book is just amazing. The information that is in this and the things you can learn about pawpaws, it will blow your mind. It'll become your new favorite fruit, I guarantee you. And I know I went along, so I'm going to stop sharing
Oh,
and try to take in some questions.
yeah. I just wanted to say, first of all, Jada, thank you so much. This was so fun. Um, my boss always says he'll never try a mushroom without going to sit by the hospital.
Yes. I don't want to scare anybody, okay? Because there are quite a few easily recognizable mushrooms that you can just go out and find and have no problems whatsoever. Now, your particular gut system may not like them, but
Hmm.
other like I have friends that are really into like ink caps and I get sick on ink caps, but they
Hmm.
eat them and they're perfectly fine with them. But like, just you have to know what you're looking at. And it's not hard to learn. This is not, we're not talking about rocket science, okay? This is not something that you need to study a million days for. This is something that you can literally look at a picture and go, does this look like the picture? Yep, sure looks like the picture. Good. You know, um, and and again, all mushrooms are edible once.
Yeah, exactly. Jane, yes, I will collect all of the book titles and all of the links that were shared, and I will send them with the follow-up email next week. Um, do folks have any questions? Jada, I'll say there was a lot of like discussion back and forth and a lot
Nice.
of sharing while you were
Good.
speaking.
Yeah,
Yep,
I sent you the
there will be a replay.
pause
Oh,
for
sorry,
the,
go ahead, Jada.
no, it's okay. I'm just looking through some of the, am I weird? But the service berries. I eat my, yeah, you can eat all of those. The service berries you can eat raw. Pawpaws you should eat raw. Some people really, really, really love persimmons raw. Some people have that reaction to the alum that's on them. Um, and it's, persimmons in particular, when they fall from the tree and they start to get a little browny, they're actually still good to use. As and great when you're mashing them up in a sieve to get the skin and seeds off of them. It's just it's perfect to put in the freezer, and they freeze really well. So does pawpaw. So do the pawpaws. So if you get a whole bunch of pawpaws and you can't eat them all in one sitting, you can clean them all out, put the pawpaw pulp into a freezer bag and toss it in the freezer and pull it out as needed. We make jam out of the pawpaws. There are people who make persimmon jam as well. So yeah.
Yeah, Jada, you're the one who taught me that you can use persimmon pulp in baking as if you were using pureed pumpkin, and I
Yeah,
quite like
yeah,
that.
yeah. It's a decent replacer. Yes, I'm seeing something about destroying angels. Yes, don't even touch them. And the agarics. The agarics can be deadly. I certainly would never, ever, ever tell people to try an agaric without really, really knowing what you're doing. Agarics have to be processed fairly heavily before they can be.
Jada, what are agarics?
So agarics are those mushrooms that we see everywhere, and like my house is covered with those little like cute mushrooms. They're red with the little white dots on them. They're Mario Brothers mushrooms. Okay,
Oh, yep, yep,
they're
yep.
synonymous with Christmas actually for a lot of people, and that's
Huh.
because they have a hallucinogenic property to them. And but they are very, they have to be processed. And the way that they used to do them back in the day is they would feed them to a reindeer, and then the reindeer would pee and they would drink the reindeer pee. And I'm not saying you should
Now,
do
who
it.
figured that out?
I am, yeah, how they figured it out, it's very, very long winters indoors with your reindeer. Okay, in the northern regions of Europe, okay. People will try anything once.
hmm
Yes. Resources about where you can learn about areas that have been polluted. One of the links that I shared with you has that information, but also go to your local like DNR or USDA office, and they should have information about that. I would not say that mushrooms that have gills are more problematic than ones sponge-like under their caps. It really depends on the mushroom and the type, because there are so many types. And a fun fact about mushrooms, I need to tell you this because it's one of the most amazing fact. They are neither plant nor animal. They are their own category. And they're the mycelial network that creates and maintains mushrooms is all over the world. It travels all over the world, and it is in space as well.
Whoa.
And the mycelial network can be found in living in space. And on planets that are technically dead, they have found remnants of mycelial networks.
Amazing.
And so one could say that if you kill off the mycelial network, you will not have a planet anymore. I have tried wild ginger. We don't really have a lot of it. Well, we do actually, but I don't like deep hiking because I'm afraid of animals, wild animals. So,
Yeah.
um, but yes, so we have some more in the bigger forest. I was trying to cultivate some in my backyard and it failed miserably.
Yeah. Just to, so, we're a small group here. We don't have expertise for the whole country and all over the world. And my hope is that you can take the information you learned here and go do your own research for where you live and expand upon that. But we can't possibly touch on every region in the country. And I mean, we have
100%.
around the world. We have people coming in from around the world too.
And the reality is almost everything that I mentioned to you today um, is in large swaths of the country. Okay. Um, the southern region has a lot of its own specific wild foraging stuff, and a lot of it is not native. So it was brought there and then included, right? And became sort of ubiquitous. Um, I'm not that familiar with it because I've never lived in the southern part of our country, nor have I lived on the west coast of our country. Yeah, I do like wild mustard. But there are region specific wild edible guides. So yes, please look out for those region-specific wild edible guides. And as in my presentation, there was a list there of good, the Audubon Society, those kinds of things, like those like I can't think what it's called. Smithsonian actually puts out some of that stuff too. So yeah, and I do like wild mustard. I have a lot growing in my backyard. So yeah. Anything else, Emma, my dear?
Think that's it for today. I want to thank you again and thank you to everyone who showed up. Again, I hope you can take this and feel confident in going to explore more about this and for where you live. And
Yeah.
oh, I'll answer this one, Kathy. I love purslane.
Purslane is amazing. Yeah, my wife is very obsessed with purslane. Um,
Good.
I find it kind of slimy, so I'm not a huge
Oh,
fan of it. But I know how healthy it is, so I make myself eat it. Um, but I'm somebody who
hashtag
loves
adulting.
okra, so I should get over the slime, so it's fine.
All right, let me put up our last slide here. Maybe if there it is. Screen two. And there we go. All right. Um, Thank you so much for joining us today and being a part of Green America's Climate Victory Gardens community. Together, we can make a real difference in creating positive change for our planet and its people. You can keep the momentum going and stay connected by subscribing to our newsletter to remain informed about our latest campaigns, events, and sustainability tips. Your support fuels our work toward a greener, fairer future. Consider donating today to help us continue our vital programs and initiatives, including these free gardening webinars. Every contribution counts. Remember, your actions matter, and together we can build a more sustainable and just world. Thank you for your commitment to creating positive change, and we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar here. I'll say the next webinar with Jada is on preserving, and it's going to be a bit more how-to interactive. Uh, Jada will actually be showing you how to do different preserving techniques. So please tune in for that.
Yeah, and you can find my book there. It is a journal, and it will help you kind of you know, get your garden going and figure out what you want to do with your garden. It's almost like a 2-year journal. It could be a 3-year journal. So please check that out.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Any sort of organizing, figuring out you could possibly do for your garden, there's something in the book to help you do that.
Yeah.
So, all right, everyone, thank you so much. And if you're in the US, enjoy the long holiday weekend, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Stop share. There we go.